Welcome everyone! In this video, we're going to be discussing the true villain of Across the Spider-Verse because we could be mistaken on who the actual big bad is. Is the Spot actually the main antagonist, or are we being set up for something bigger? Let's find out. Okay, so let's start off with the Spot. He's one of the more obvious villains that we know of, and he has actually been confirmed to be the main villain of the film. But see, we've already been misdirected many times by Sony and Marvel, and while the Spot may seem like an important villain, I doubt that he's the main one. First, because this movie is split into two parts, and second, we don't really see a lot happening between the Spot and Miles during the trailer. Now, the second point I made doesn't really need to be part of some sort of criteria for the main antagonist, but come on. You'd at least see the two fighting a little bit, wouldn't you? Now, despite his appearance making you think that he's some sort of Dalmatian man, let's see what we have found out about him from the comics. The Spot is a villain only hardcore fans of Spider-Man would really have known or even remembered. How did he even become this guy? Well, in the comics, Spot originally worked for Kingpin as a scientist and was working to replicate the abilities of the hero Cloak, who was able to travel to the Dark Force dimension and use Dark Force powers. Pretty cool, and Spot thought so too. After managing to create a portal to another dimension, Jonathan Owen stepped into it and became the Spot. This guy actually has interdimensional portals all over his body which he can use to teleport himself and his attacks, which is pretty cool and could become part of a really interesting fight, especially considering the Spider-Verse would be in the mix. So this antagonist being able to move through these portals is messing with the fabric of reality already, and that's because these portals give him access to different dimensions. And that could potentially break the Spider-Verse, couldn't it? We'll just have to wait and see how that plays out, but how do we defeat someone like him? He's even immortal, because if he gets heavily injured, he just goes back into one of his little holes to recover in the spotted dimension, and guess what? Spidey senses don't work on him either, because his attacks are coming from a different dimension each time, which I won't think too hard about it for now, but the Spot is definitely sounding like the Spider-Verse supervillain at this point. This villain actually wasn't anything serious in the comics and never really posed a huge threat to Spider-Man. In fact, he was even made fun of for his goofy name, and he had a team of villains to take revenge against Spider-Man called the Legion of Losers. He didn't name them this, Spider-Man did, because in the comic world, the Spot is one of the weakest villains Spider-Man has faced. This is one of the reasons why the creators of Spider-Verse are promoting Spot as the big bad this time, because he definitely does have the potential to be a bigger threat. I mean, fighting through different dimensional portals is no joke, and with just a little bit of imagination, a lot can happen with his character alone. And I think that's what the creators are trying to do. So now, in order to defeat him, here's a little secret between you and me. The Spot cannot actually unleash unlimited portals, so he is left vulnerable once a set amount of spots leave his body, and that's how he can be defeated. But there is a part 2 to this whole story, which means it would not just end with Spot being defeated as the big bad. So who is the big bad? Will the fight just continue on to the next part until it ultimately ends? No, there is something more interesting in the works here, and even though I've kind of convinced myself that the Spot could really be the big bad, I just really think that there's a bigger evil hidden here, which I will get to in a bit. Oscar Isaac will be playing Spider-Man 2099 in the new Spider-Verse movie, but who is the character exactly? Diving into the comics, Spider-Man 2099, or Miguel O'Hara, was created as a result of Peter David and Rick Leonardi imagining a futuristic Spider-Man. He does not belong in the main MCU timeline, and is actually from a different universe, titled Earth 928, and works as an employee at Alchemax, as a result of the boss of the corporation being his own father. His father pressured him into messing with genetics and DNA to change or enhance human physiology. But Miguel quite disliked the idea of Alchemax having such a monopoly over the city of Nueva York. Being a genius in the field of genetics, he had a lot of expectations and envy surrounding him, and after being sabotaged and manipulated as a result, which had him consume questionable products and some gene splicing, we now have Spider-Man 2099. similar to regular Spider-Man, but also not because he has venomous fangs, talons, enhanced hearing and vision, which even allows him to see in the dark. He does not have the Spidey sense, and his enhanced senses are sort of what makes up for it. Miguel can even shoot spider webs that are actually real spider silk, and it all comes without any sort of device, which also differentiates him from some of the other Spider-Men. It's like he's an improved version since he can do so much more, but where he falls short is his moral compass, as he does not hesitate to kill some of the villains for the greater good, and can be a bit of an anti-hero sometimes. This difference in values is what will cause a rivalry between Miguel and Miles, and that's why we see them having a bit of a skirmish in the trailer. The creators, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, confirmed this themselves, that Miles and Miguel will not share similar views, and this dispute will be one of the obstacles in the film that Miles will have to overcome. It's difficult to say at this point what exactly they will have this disagreement over, but from what I've gathered from everything so far, they will most likely be fighting over Miles trying to mess with the multiverse in some way. I will expand more on that later in the video, but this is why I think Miguel will also be sort of an antagonist in the film. Remember the first movie, Into the Spider-Verse? We got a cameo of him in the post-credits scene, and that was super hype. So he definitely has a bigger role. Not that any of that was in question, but he also mentions Doctor Strange and the little nerd in the trailer from Earth 199999, which is actually Earth 616. I know it's confusing. Listen, I didn't make the rules here. That's just how it is for some reason. I'm going to just briefly mention the Vulture here. He is confirmed for the movie and is going to be played by Jorma Taccone. I don't really think Vulture is going to play a huge role. Maybe a short fight scene between him and Spider-Man 2099 or some sort of a minor distraction. I mean, both of them do have a fight in the comics, and there are actually many versions of the Vulture. I know, surprising. He was reimagined as well in the future of 2099, and Miguel honestly struggled a bit against him. But still, maybe this villain will be a little bit of an inconvenience, like he gets in the way or he's just supporting the spot or something. I don't know, I just don't see him being more than that. However, medieval Vulture though, the design looks pretty amazing, and whatever they are going to show us, oh yeah, I'm all in. Okay, so I've already mentioned the more obvious villains and those who actually have been confirmed to be the main antagonists, but it's all a misdirection, I'm telling you. What I suspect, and from what I've gathered, the Inheritors would make the most sense of being the actual villains of the Spider-Verse. Now, there are rumors and theories going around that the Inheritors might actually show up in the film, and it would be so fitting if they really did. Let me tell you about them from the comics. They are a family with vampire-like qualities, and they can absorb the life force of others. But that's not all. They also have a personal vendetta against the spider heroes. And yes, there's more. They have the ability to travel the multiverse and have actually killed multiple Spider-Men. There's a lot that has happened in the comics though, and there are some secrets about them that reveal them as a lighter threat, but I'm just gonna go on here and tell you guys more about how threatening they are. We don't have to pay attention to their weaknesses right now. The Inheritors are also actually the main villains of the Spider-Verse comics in the 2014 issue by Dan Slott and Mark Bagley. And again, doesn't it make so much sense that all of these spider people have banded together as a result of the multiverse, and then these antagonists who specifically hunt spiders across the multiverse are there as the main threat? The Inheritors in the comics are sort of like a family, originally from Earth 001. They have the head of the family and father figure, who is Solus, and then you got the rest of the members. You got Morlun, Deimos, Karn, Genix, Brix, Bora, Verna, Malos, Thanos, not to be confused with Thanos, and who am I missing? Oh yeah, Morsha. And now we're gonna talk about the spider totems here for a bit, because this is really important to Sony's Spider-Verse. Do you remember about a year ago when the director of Morbius, Daniel Espinosa, mentioned the totems and their connection with the multiverse? This gives us a hint to the direction these films might be taking. Sony has planned the release of Madam Web and Silk, and what do they both have in common? The connection to the web of life and destiny that actually maintains the multiverse. The spider totems are these beings that weave the web to maintain it, and the Inheritors see spiders as a threat to their existence. Huh? Now, isn't it all sort of connecting and coming together? I think that maybe the Inheritors are going to work in a plot to eliminate all spider people, and then also eliminate the spider totems, causing a massive multiversal imbalance that Miles will have to fight to prevent. In the comics, they also made a spider army to fight against the Inheritors, so it might take a similar direction, and these series of events could carry on to Madam Web and Silk for a bigger plot. Okay, I'm curious now, what do you guys think? Am I on to something here? We have now reached the point where we have talked about all the obvious villains and all those potential ones. So now we talk about the actual villain of the Spider-Verse, and that is Mr. Miles Morales himself. Well, at least in theory, because if we think a bit about the definition of what really constitutes as an antagonist, it is someone who would be the threat to the Spider-Verse, the world, the spider people, and the entire multiverse itself. If we take what we can get out of that trailer, the biggest hint is the mention of Doctor Strange and the Little Nerd by Miguel O'Hara. Why would he mention them? No, it is not only because they want to establish a connection between the MCU. It makes more sense if he mentions them as a warning to Miles. Something like, this is what happened to their world when they messed with the multiverse, Miles. And then we also see Miles and Miguel in a fight, perhaps because Miles wants to do something Miguel sees as a threat. There's also another scene in the trailer where we see Gwen Stacy crying over the lifeless body of the Spider-Man in her world, having been killed in some incident. The spider heroes have faced their fair share of tragedies, with most, if not all, having lost to someone dear to them. What if Miles is attempting to reverse those tragedies by using the multiverse? Or by messing with the web of life and destiny, which makes Miguel reference the events of Earth 1999 and even fight Miles to try and stop him? And you know what else is quite interesting? In the comics, Miles actually ends up on Earth 616 due to his universe being destroyed by incursions. Could this be what concludes Beyond the Spider-Verse? And then Miles actually shows up in Secret Wars? Whew, I don't know, but the movies tend to deviate a lot from the comics, but if the source is any form of a hint as to what we can expect, I've got to admit, that's pretty exciting. You made it to the end of the video. Truly, I am so excited for Spider-Man 2099. He looks so cool. But if you have any ideas of your own on who the actual villain might be, do let us know in the comments below. And until next time, thanks for watching.